G'day, I'm Patrick from Douglas Fir Design. Welcome to the Router Bits. This next application, you actually need to get a separate kit to go along with this. You go buy this separate kit. It's got this base plate and this bearing, and what it is an edge trimming kit for trimming hardwood edging on shelves, or it doesn't have to be hardwood, whatever you got, and also trimming dowels. So although you have to purchase this separately, if this is the kind of thing that you do often, it's really useful. It does it really well, neatly, cleanly, and you can, repeat it endlessly, much more rapidly than you could any other way. So for trimming edges on shelves, you can tip the whole shelf on edge and use a flush trimming bit in a router running along the skinny edge of the shelf. So that can be done, but if your shelves are really large, it gets really awkward, and this just does it much more easily and more safely. So you get your base plate, you slide it into that hole on the existing base plate, tighten up the little nut on the back, and then we get our bearing and we screw it into this little hole at the end here with the screw that's the little bolt that's provided. What that bearing allows us to do is run along the edge of our hardwood face here so that we get a really nice clean cut. So we position this so it's sitting on the edge, we slide the router along so that the router bit is positioned over the edging that we want to cut, and then we set our height so that it's perfectly flush with the actual shelf substrate, not the edging, and that's what we want to cut. So we need to make sure that that height is set really accurately, otherwise we're going to cut into our shelf, and that's not what we want. So it might be useful to do a test cut, make sure that height is correct. The way I like to do it is bring the bit back from the edge, set the height by bringing the router bit so that it's just touching that shelf, and then set a depth stop, and then you can raise it up, bring it over the edging where it needs to be, and then you can lock the position of the router along those sliding rails in place, and when you're ready to cut, you can plunge down into that edging and it will be just in the right position. So I'll do that cut, and then I'll demonstrate the dowel cutting application as well. Usually for trimming dowels, I'll just use a Japanese flush saw, cut it down flush and then sand it off. But I do sometimes mark the surface of the timber that I'm using, which is probably my poor technique, but this does it really easily, really quickly, especially if you had a whole bunch of them that needed to be cut. I don't even need to sand this, so I just pass it over really quick and really easy. Now this won't fit everywhere. Sometimes when you're doing dowels, you're just gonna have to get in with a really small saw, but for a lot of the time, this will be really useful.